So what is blockchain? How can we visualize it? And I don't want a technical definition. What I want is a definition that'll be useful to economists to help think about the economics behind blockchain. Sometimes when people try to explain blockchain, they just go into way too much technical detail about hashes and things that are not really central to the economics of it. And it's almost like going back to the 1940s when the microwave was first invented and asking somebody who was excited about the new invention of the microwave at the time, what is a microwave? And they'd start to go into some explanation of electromagnetic radiation and particles in food, and that's not the explanation that people are really asking for when they ask what is a microwave. What they want to hear is it cooks your food. So I want the it cooks your food definition of blockchain. And it's more complicated than a microwave, really, so it's going to take me a few videos to explain it, but that's what I'm trying to do in this video series. So what is blockchain? Let's take this one jargony word at a time. Blockchain is a public, immutable, distributed ledger. Well, okay, not all blockchains are public, but let's just start by thinking about a public one. Okay, and I need to add an asterisk to the word immutable because it is possible to mute blockchains, it's just really hard to do. Oh, and the word distributed, that is actually a pretty vague word and a pretty complex word. So I'm going to need a whole nother video to even begin to think about the word distributed. But this definition will get us started. How can we start to think about the public immutable part of the blockchain? Well, to make it visualizable, I like to think of a prehistoric village with a stone tablet in the middle of town. And you can go out into the town square and chisel anything you want onto that stone. And since it's chiseled in stone, it's really hard to change. It's basically immutable. And since anyone in town can go out to the village square and look at the stone, it's public. You can write anything you want to on that stone. You can write graffiti. You could write Elizabeth Bennet was here, or Ron and Hermione forever. You can even lie on that public stone. I could go out there and write, I won 18 Olympic medals. Nothing's stopping you from lying. And that will actually be true on a blockchain as well. So it means we're going to need to be pretty careful to figure out how do you determine what is valid and what's not valid on a blockchain, and how do you incentivize appropriate types of validation. In any case, the stone tablet image just makes it easier for me to visualize what a blockchain is. Let's think more carefully about the ledger part of blockchain's definition. What is a ledger? I'm thinking it's like a spreadsheet, and as an economist, I love spreadsheets. Love them. Well, there are three basic types of information that go nicely into a ledger. There's facts, there's property rights, and there's contracts. First, ledgers can keep track of facts about the world. If we go back to our stone in the middle of a town example, we might imagine them keeping track of how many days it rained last year, how many sheep died in Farmer Joe's flock, or how many people got sick with the flu in the recent epidemic. Modern-day examples of facts that could be recorded on a blockchain include stock prices, rainfall in inches, number of times flu symptoms were Googled by zip code, sales per day at a small town diner, visitors to Niagara Falls, and store hours at the Dollar Tree. Second, ledgers are good for keeping track of property rights. In our small village, we might have Farmer Joe, who owns 10 sheep, and Farmer Matt, who owns 5 cows. And they could write that information onto a blockchain. They could even trade their cows and sheep and write that trade onto the blockchain so that everybody in town knows who owns how many sheep and how many cows. And this has actually been one of the most important applications of blockchain, because writing onto the blockchain, I give my friend 5 Bitcoin, is basically how you hand over Bitcoin from one person to another. Instead of actually handing them 5 physical coins, you just write onto a blockchain, I give my friend 5 Bitcoin, and that is as good as handing over the physical cash. And there's all kinds of property rights that are useful to record onto a blockchain in modern day life. Money, data, patents, college degrees, homes, cars, debts, licenses. Property rights are important for helping society function smoothly, and economists have known this for years. The last thing that's good to put onto a ledger is a contract. And if we go back to our small town, small village example, we might imagine Farmer Joe wanting to hire teenager Tom for the summer, in which case he could go to the stone in the middle of town and write a contract there so that everybody in town would know that he would follow through. And it might look something like this. If teenager Tom works for me all 3 months of the summer, then I will pay teenager Tom the first 3 sheep born to my flock next spring. And contracts are essentially if-then statements like this. Modern-day contracts include mortgage agreements, wage contracts, terms of service on apps, on phones, rental agreements, and phone agreements. There's a problem, however, when it comes to contracts, and that is both people have to agree to a contract, otherwise it doesn't work. And so if you have a public place where you can write a contract, but you can lie in that public place, that's no good. What if Farmer Joe goes out in the middle of the night and writes onto that stone, Catherine the baker has agreed to give Farmer Joe 10 loaves of bread in exchange for 1 dandelion? That doesn't work. Catherine the baker is just going to say, I never agreed to that, and most people in town will probably believe her, in which case having the contract written onto the stone in the middle of town doesn't really do any good. What we really need is a stamp of approval, or an unforgeable signature from both Joe and Catherine for any contract to be valid between them. Well, I won't fully explain cryptography in this video, but basically cryptography gives people their own unforgeable signature or stamp of approval that they can use to agree to contracts that are written onto blockchains. And it does this through a key system with a public key, which is a little bit like what your signature looks like to other people, and a private key, which is a little bit like the password you need to sign that signature. Granted, cryptography cannot stop people from lying on a blockchain, but it can stop people from being signed onto contracts that they never agreed to. So, in this video, I've begun to give you a way of visualizing what blockchain is. And at this point, you should have a whole bunch of questions. Why do you need a blockchain for this kind of thing? Won't a message board do? How do you stop people from lying on a blockchain? How do you determine validity? How will a public blockchain help with data privacy? Isn't that a contradiction? I hope to tackle these and other questions about blockchain in upcoming videos, so subscribe if you're still curious.